Wszystko zaczęło się od króla Jagiełły. Mała Łodzia stała się miastem, które w XIX wieku rozwijało się najszybciej na świecie. W ciągu zaledwie 60 lat od powstania pierwszej manufaktury powstaje przemysłowa, wielonarodowościowa metropolia. Jednak wiatry historii nie zawsze jej sprzyjały. To, co zniszczył los, odbudowują łodzianie. Nasza Łódź. Miasto wielkich szans. Od 600 lat w sercu Polski i Europy.
Jesteśmy Polakami. Jesteśmy niezwykłym społeczeństwem. Zawsze w obliczu wielkiego wyzwania potrafimy się mobilizować. Potrafimy stawić czoła wielkim wyzwaniom. Bo nie potrafimy stać obojętnie. Bo obchodzi nas bezpieczeństwo i przyszłość naszych dzieci. Bo wierzymy, że nadzieja zwycięża apatię, lęk i strach. Bo mimo wszelkich przeciwności nigdy się nie poddajemy. Potrafimy ciężko pracować, wspierać się i działać razem. Bo zależy nam na naszej ojczyźnie, naszym osiedlu, naszej ulicy. Bo chcemy naszych niezbywalnych praw i wolności. Bo nie oddamy naszych marzeń. Nadchodzi punkt zwrotny.
Dzień dobry Państwu. Nazywam się
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jacek Łęgiewicz. I'm a member of the board of the Digital Poland Association, who is employees association of digital industry in Poland. At the same time, we are a partners of Games of Freedom. I'm really glad that you decided to join our panel and to take part in the discussion with our guests, amongst whom we have Aleksandra Gajewska, leader of Civic Platform of Mazovia region. First of all, member of the Sejm, and chairman of the committee of a climate protection committee. Also, this is why Ms. Aleksandra is so competent in these matters. Also works with youth, have a cell phone, as most of us. We have also Mr. Kamil Mirowski, Public Affairs Manager, Zalando, Poland, also being a coordinator in our employers organization of Digital Poland as a e-commerce coordinator. Therefore, this digital sector is also known to him, and Zuzanna Warso, a researcher that works with Open Future Foundation. First of all, author of many texts, publications, papers, somewhere between human rights, technology, and digitalization. We also invite the audience for the discussion by raising your hand in the end of our panel, but also in the meantime, if you have any questions, I will be glad to give you this opportunity to keep this discussion vivid. We will discuss the impact on the market environment. We want to discuss the impact of technology to geopolitical and ecological worlds. So first question I would like to address to Ms. Doctor. First question is, What is the role of business that we are used to during last century? The role to multiply the invested funds, which is inscribed in mostly all statutes of the companies. We start businesses to generate profit, and only then through redistribution, through these different dividends or taxation systems, to allocate it also for other goals, social goals. In what extent this is still up-to-date model, in what extent we expect businesses to do more than just generate capital. Thank you for this question. Indeed, it is a quite philosophical question. I would like to say straight what I think about it, and we can carry on. I think this paradigm is fundamentally wrong. It would lead us to the catastrophe. And that is where we are now. Doing this business as usual would just push us out of this cliff that we are standing now. The question is how much we can believe that company can be reformed, in what extent companies that have inscribed in their statutes multiplication of the profits, in what extent they can go through this transformation. Until now, I think that actions related to responsible business were mostly PR actions. Suffice to look on how structures of big companies look to see where their departments are located. Quite often they are located closer to PR than to strategy, especially in huge energy companies. Everyone understands that we are in deep crisis and radical changes have to be done. Yet we understand that these changes appear very slowly. A good example, if we are talking about digital market, of how these ethical questions or questions related to the influence of technology into human rights, how they are treated in biggest technological companies. I'm not sure if you know the case, but since you are here, you probably know it. Timrit Gebro, a researcher who was released from Google soon after the department was formed that worked with artificial intelligence. So the subject that is widely discussed by us, the researchers, mainly female, wrote a very famous paper, widely quoted, that explained what can go wrong with artificial intelligence, and as a consequence she lost her position and department was resolved. So it is related to the rhetorics. We understand that the change should take place. We understand that technology in business is not anymore effective, but on the other side we have actions that led to the situation. Thank you. In that case, what is the social comprehension of that? The question to member of the Sejm, Ms. Gajewska, you being on MP's shifts, being in contact with citizens, with local communities, can you notice a certain pressure to change this role of businesses? Can we say that there is a pressure to redesign these roles of the businesses? So from one side, not to suppress this economic liberty to be competitive as compared to other players from different countries, but at the same time, can they address specific expectations from Polish society? Of course, there is this pressure, and I would like to agree to what Ms. Doctor said, that it has to be some facade movement right now it looks just nicely from the outside with a nice wrap to sell it nice. But if we look at the details, it doesn't look so good. My feeling is that when we face all that in legislation level, we need to say straight that legislation in Poland does not keep up with the technology development, and all the solutions we try to implement in Sejm chase or try to chase all that already exists in the market. So chasing these solutions already implemented were all the applications used in passenger transportations. Bolt, Uber, we tried to improve the safety. Especially we asked for passengers who used that because identification of drivers was on very poor level. We meet in games of freedom in a day when this act was changed and now is coming into force. But I started to work on it 2 years ago. So that's how reality looks in legislation in this extent. We look close to how companies work. We can create pressure. But in fact, if not for the media, today none of these companies that was obliged to make these changes would not make these changes. They now use legislational gaps. They are monopolists in the market. They are huge players. They make huge amounts on that, so that's their benefit. But me looking closer on what amounts are allocated for increasing the safety and what amounts are allocated for promoting their safety increase, it was 30-40% more for the promotion. So I saw that they promote solutions like they introduce female drivers, and that is to increase the safety. But when we started to check how it looks like, the access was so limited to female drivers. It was very easy to pretend chances to verify that the driver is indeed a female was very limited. Many people would protest in companies that work with high technologies. So employees on the lowest ranks, where there are warehouses, trade unions, they also try to protect their rights. And I could present many such examples. My best example where freedom and eligibility are meeting is 5G, and I would try to present this example very briefly. I like to talk about it because there's a lot of myths, misbeliefs, lies around this, and it sums up. It's enough to go to any town in my region just to speak about development and technology that some businesses want to develop there. It's enough to speak for just a moment when someone would say, but they want to build 5G antenna, it would kill the birds around, it would influence our health. Then we try to start any discussion basing on facts. Do you have any research on that? Where do you have the knowledge about that? Then we start the discussion on where is the basis for democracy. We who have solid grounds, we know better, so we will decide for you, or the local community also has the right to decide. It's their right if they don't want any 5G antenna. It's their commune and they don't want something like that. At the same time, companies that emerge around have the same rights as companies in neighboring areas, especially touristically, recreationally popular regions. They require even more coverage. So those are examples when we need development, but we have a lot of limitations. Also, the pressure is significant. We stand aside a little bit, we spectate that, but we should, in fact, pose the narrative. We need to act, and it's not the case of Polish Sejm or European Parliament, but I believe that this will change in nearest future, that we will have specialists that know the field who would discuss the experts, not just in national but worldwide level, about development of digitalization. And we can, together with these people, develop it, not just creating solutions to support local communities, employees, but also to be a partner for companies that work on this extent. Kamil, I think that the ball was passed to your corner. I believe that greenwashing matter, opposing all the narratives about business responsibility to the actual situation, I think it transferred to in what extent we want to be auto-regulating when it comes to business, when it comes to obligation of a company, allocating resources for being responsible. This may lead to companies' failure. The question is how you or the whole sector, because you are also a sector coordinator, what is your approach? And if you have any questions, in the meantime, you can raise your hand. As Ms. MP said about people from small communities, we can hear questions about 5G or other questions. We can share the microphone with you. Good afternoon. I think that this metaphor, this comparison to 5G is very good, because in the same time, employees of this commune would like to have a nice, fast internet, but they don't want to have this high antenna that would harm birds around. So there is a question of pressure from public opinion, as you represent, that influence the decision makers, who, under this pressure, make new regulations. Briefly addressing that, well, I don't feel that I'm standing in the goal right now. I'm not a goalkeeper. I think I'm more of a supporter here in this discussion. I just want to say that, indeed, it's more the question about, do we discuss if business wants to make money in a short or long term? Because when it comes to short-term return from the investment, of course, I can agree, all that is desired. But when we talk about investment, not for a month, 2 or 3, when we talk about years or decades, business, of course, needs to understand, and I might admit that quite often they understand that the sector of their stakeholders, so to keep it in a corporate language, and shareholders, interested parties, yes, these are all difficult definitions. All people that are interested in the business and how it is implemented is much wider, and I have no doubts that in order to develop in a given country, in a given society, to recruit people, sell products, produce products, we need to take it into consideration. I would say that this discussion is somewhere between, if nowadays economy is focused on generating on a short term, or is it more looking at the long-term vision? I think that the question that you asked, Jacek, about regulation is so important. I can relate to fashion sector, e-commerce sector that I represent. We are right now in the sector we are in the time when the pressure and expectations of customers are so important for the business, and that made the whole sector to go through gigantic transformation to make it possible for customer to make aware decisions, and by that to encourage manufacturers to build their portfolio of products. So that's the role also of technological companies. Zalando is this kind of company that combines consumers and manufacturers. I think that the clue is to achieve certain balance, to be transparent, comprehensible for consumer, and also we need that consumer is willing to understand that. So during the process of purchase, he or she would not need to read the whole manuals, guidebooks of decision making, but to understand what is the level of their decision. I think that regulators on EU level try to increase this level for EU, and this discussion is so present in European Union, but e-commerce can be limited by country borders or continents borders, and regulations that we have on European level, the questions of execution on national level does not necessarily apply to manufacturers or retailers outside the EU. So we have this level increased for our internal European manufacturers. Expectations are higher, but at the same time, customer often decides by the category of price. And in fact, today we play on a playground which is not equal.
But the regulations like the GDPR do not only apply to businesses established in Europe, but sell in Europe. So to sell in Europe, to bring your products and services here, you need to adhere to these regulations. And I believe Europe is a good example that proves that the whole planet had to stick to European regulations. Well, GDPR is a good example how Europe can impose certain pace of regulations and visions to other states. And its success depends on whether other states follow or not. In my industry, I have the example to the contrary. When everybody was busy with regulating platforms during COVID, the business explosion was made by ultra-fast fashion in Asia, who operate in direct-to-customer. So whatever they produce in a non-EU country, they send directly to consumer in another country. So the consumer is an important. And so tax policy in Asian countries make it more competitive, 20% at the very start. The cost of sending a parcel from Shanghai to Warsaw is cheaper than from Warsaw to Warsaw. We all sponsor it. Additionally, there is this de minimis tax threshold, 150 euros, that all parcels below that value is not subject to customs procedure. No customs, no such protections. The reports by international institutions say that such products may contain toxic substances, often exceeding the standards by 100%. So in my industry, in children's and newborns clothing included. So I believe it's not that easy that if you approve something, adopt something, it's enforced. Then the structure of the EU is another problem. The EU easily passes directives, but the implementation level is in the European member states. The third sector, we have questions from the audience, I can see in a moment. Just a word of reference. Well, the previous concept of profit, should it be short or long-term profit? Well, I believe that's a philosophical, ethical debate rather than legal, but I believe that our greed and business greed, the attack to multiply profit as much as possible without changing this attitude, it would be difficult to alter the reality. Without self-restriction on the business and individual levels, we won't be able to get out of the crisis. I can speak of, and that is e-commerce and buying things online, make a great example referring to the topic of our panel. On the one hand, we can say we buy things online. We use less energy because we do not travel to the store, we do not consume fuel, but the easiness of the purchase makes us buy more and more. And that is a paradox that is well known, where growing easiness of taking some actions does not lead to reducing consumption, but to the contrary. Again, an example from ITC technologies. The fact that data transfer is getting cheaper and cheaper and more efficient does not make the total transfer go down, but rise, because we do more and more. We watch Netflix, we play online games, we order taxis, etc., etc. So, the growing efficiency and productivity is critical. We mustn't abandon it, but without seeing the broader perspective, we will stay in the rush of consumption and producing more and more things. On the other hand, we have those indices and ratios where you need to prove you act responsibly, but stock exchange indices, but they are not of as great interest to investors as it was initially expected. There might be a group of investors who would like to invest in companies that act responsible and sustainable, and that didn't work well. Just a comment to which you may address later on to questions. There was one at the back. If we could ask for the microphone, please raise your hand. And then we have another question in the third row. Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself. Okay. Paulina Grabowska. I am a designer in sustainable and regenerative development. So I will ask questions about climate change and Zalando's carbon footprint. If we could speak, you are a huge platform, and I want to know in how many countries you operate, how that translates to emissions. Do you trade emissions? Do you take it into consideration at all? What is the MP's stance on that? Climate changes as such, how do you perceive that? Because I would like to direct the discussion to what's the topic, because I'm very much interested to see that you understand what climate changes are. Well, I would say galloping changes. And the other question? Magda Andrzejczyk, I'd like to refer to what you said and focus on the climate disaster. My question is a bit different, though. We speak about regulations, and I'm most interested in the digital market impact. There is this taxonomy of European Union. We have the group in the Ministry of Development. From your perspective, why there is no such taxonomy in tech industry? There are no other industries like furniture, food, commerce as such. Why these industries are forgotten? And the other thing is regarding the unmatching regulations to the changing technologies. I believe Polish regulations do not match the changes in the European Union and match in this aspect. So are we aware of that? Do we have any ideas how to adjust it? Well, the second question first. First of all, why the ICT industry is excluded? Hardly anyone is aware of the ICT impact on the environment and climate. When we see the numbers, we can say, well, 4% of carbon footprint overall, based on different reports, ICT technologies add up 4% to the total carbon footprint. 4% sounds not much. So we're still well, the topic of this panel is niche. Does anybody think of ICT technologies' impact on the climate change, on the environment? I think you are raising your hands. I also think about it. That's why I'm so interested. We are discussing it here in the Freedom Games. But social, public awareness, regulators' awareness, well, they find it niche topic. What is dangerous about it if we see the growth pace of ICT technologies in energy consumption and carbon footprint, it's racing. A couple of years ago, it was near zero. Now we have 4%. If you add to that the fact that AI would be ubiquitous now, and it consumes more and more energy and generates still more carbon footprint, I believe it's high time we started thinking about it. But that's these are the reasons why ICT is excluded from discussion on the climate impact. The ICT technologies, well, we still live in the world of metaphors, that this is a cloud flying somewhere there. Nobody is thinking about servers, data centers that consume water and lots of energy. So we are at the moment when the topic is entering the public debate, but still very shy. Well, we still think about net impact. On the one hand, it is developing, and it has 4% shares expected to grow. On the other hand, reading an article on your phone leaves less footprint than a paper version of the same reading. The same digital ad versus billboard ads, changing posters, transportation by trucks. There was a question directly addressed to Kamil, how Zalando and e-commerce would comment on the footprint. Well, in the light of the current regulations, a week ago, Ursula von der Leyen, in the State of the Union address, declared the focus on Zero Emission Industry Act and expanding the Green Deal. Let us remember, it assumes emission reductions by 50% till 2030, and the plans are going even more ambitious. We see that's one of the top priorities for the European Commission, where the President addressed in her speech. Indeed, it's very high in the political agenda, and it directly translates to the outcomes of the regulations in this area. And European companies will need to adjust, whether we discuss the disclosure of the value chain or reporting or informing. That's one of the keys. Do we think, as Zalando? Obviously we do, that one of the key things today that are demanded, reported, customers' expectations also go in this direction. In our case, 80–90% of our footprint is in the design and production in the fashion industry. What we do, we are trying to give our consumers opportunities, information, and tools that can make informed decisions after comparison. That's one thing. Then secondly, thanks to technology, we are trying to reduce the footprint. In our case, the technologies that help to match sizes best so that the first parcel fits you, which doesn't always mean that S is always equal, M is always equal. Our e-learning that we've implemented reduces returns by 10%. It's just a single example. We invest in solutions that are supposed to learn from machine learning, not just in states, but similar cohorts. But we want to go further. We want to provide such tools by which you'll be able, what's the precise size, and the size suggestions will inform you not just for this piece of clothing, but others. In total, it will help us to adjust production for consumers better. We also discussed about AI that helps to plan purchase ways, logistic, deliveries. So yes, we do think about it. Moreover, we invest in such solutions. It's one of the aspects. I can also speak about investment that combines ecological, environmental, and business advantage issues. It's best if those three go together. Such solutions regard the expanded producer's responsibility or systems tools that help to decompose a product into material and rebuild it. I'm not using the word recycling because it's something different for plastic bottles, for glass, and it's something different for textiles, where disassembling sample into a fiber, into a thread, is extremely difficult. Well, you have a polyester or different textile mix. We are the only European company that invests in startups in this field. I must admit that regulation will help us to go this way. I'm not saying they will force us, but they will balance the field, especially for companies that do not use it. Moreover, they are interested in exporting waste to Europe so that the European, Polish consumer included, pay for the end of the life of a product. As long as this legal field is not equal, European companies will find it more difficult to reach the expected level. So we see the business needs regulations to reasonably compete, and their enforcement. Yes, obviously, effective regulations are ones that are implemented and enforced. Well, that is not always that clear. Sometimes glorious acts of law that are formed in the European Union easily delegate competencies to national bodies, saying it's our way, now you need to secure the money, arrange the measures, control companies. Well, the first questions for me meant that about the essence of representative democracy. There are people who are worried about the situation and are asking their MP whether they act on their behalf. I'm not surprised we have worried citizens. When I'm sitting here with you, I'm more than satisfied with the level of this discussion. But when I go to my place of work, I can say it, I'm a politician, but I'm sitting with flat earthers. Because if the deputy education minister confuses climate with weather and says there are no climate changes, if a head of a leading party, a large party, and says that experts are not convinced about human impact on environmental changes, well, what we are talking about, we are discussing digital market impact on climate, and I go back to the place where people, such important people, form publicly such theses, and that is the basic problem. We would like to speak seriously about critical topics, pivotal topics. I have a son who is 4 years old, so I'm thinking about him, our children. It would be great if we had good partners. When I hear now that you expect from us solutions on electro waste, on what we should do with textile waste, I'm more than happy. But if we see what is happening in the parliament, I see there are no partners and conditions to create such laws, because the governing party, do you know that they have just killed the windmill industry? Only the EU forced them to restore it, and it's only happening. This is that today the governing parties in the international area deserve the fame of offensive children who act stupid, who only address their home constituencies. They cannot be treated seriously internationally. We are discussing key solutions for decades forward, and we are not treated there seriously because we speak different things there, do different things here. And that's an issue indeed. I remember the Clean Air program announced. That's the governing party. I have nothing to do with them. Most things they do I hate, but when they said they will run the Clean Air program, that made me happy. I thought, okay, they will distribute money to local authorities. The local authorities will distribute those among institutions, people, and we will truly improve the quality of our air. It was a huge, biggest program. But as it turned out, they were unable to do it. The EU Commission told us how to do it. They didn't. Now we have the monies from the National Recovery Fund. 40% could be sent to energy transition. I could tell you what we could do for this money, but it's not happening. Now we have 870 days when we have not even applied for this money, and we could allocate part of it to issues related to climate change. Indeed, we could act. We could equalize opportunities of Polish people compared to other European countries. We are not doing it because of our own request. Can we? Yes, we can, but not today. That's it. And the perspective, we can't do it today. We are interested in talking seriously about regulations on the climate, air quality, technological solutions, regulations on industries, whether it is e-commerce, manufacturing industries. We are now talking about fashion, but we speak of fashion. I'm dealing with, I started to dig into it. If any one of you has an account with Vinted, OLX, or similar trading places online, now there are such legal possibilities to control you. Today, the tax authorities suspect you. You trade there, not within the slow fashion attitude to prevent production of unnecessary things, but you are suspected you will earn on it. You've paid taxes on the bit of clothing you bought, and now you want to get rid of it. Your child has grown, or you don't like it any longer, and you want to buy something new. You are suspected that you are laundering money. That's how the state is treating you. And in the areas when the state would require our support, we are treated in a suspicious way. And that's a threat, because when we speak about the fashion industry, fast fashion, I'm very much interested in it. I am the eco-mother who bought most second-hand clothes for children, and same way I disposed of the things after my son. If you are approached like that, I think it's unfair, and it leads us in a very bad direction. And forcing people to buy things from Bangladesh. Other states say it would be cheaper, faster, nobody would be interested in it. It would be convenient, and this is very bad.
Kończy na
If there is no turn, it will end up in the garbage. Yes, we need to understand also that from this fast fashion that we return, most of that would not go to recirculation, and that's also fact. I also saw the report about it. We have 15 minutes, we have 3 questions. We can address to our participants. Okay, here we had first question. Yes, please. Sofia Pivovarek. I have in fact a couple of questions. Just one. The most important. Okay, I will combine them all in one question. On a recent meeting on digitalization of society, questions related to artificial intelligence are lobbied by the biggest biggest companies like Google and similar data hubs. And it is difficult to introduce tools like that in Poland. In the context of digital market, is the situation similar? Are the regulations blocked in a certain way? How the regulation of digital market context looks like, and are there any planned regulations? And here I wanted to talk about indexes. Of course, we have a big ESG index, but the truth is that this is a index prepared for stock exchange companies listed on a stock exchange. So, in fact, small companies that would like to be in this index, and I know how investors' environment looks like as a result of my work, have no chances to get there. So it's the matter of creating the space for them to be listed there in the index, and then to receive a turnover from the green profits. We need to keep the disciplines of questions, because asking this question took 2 minutes. Now, please, another question. Good afternoon, Anders Saya. I represent Electro-Eco organization that works with reprocessing of electrical garbage. Since we hear from the MP today about electrical garbages, I just want to say something optimistic. Please finish it with a question and fit in a minute. 20 years ago in Poland we had none regulations about electro waste. Everything that was on electronic devices, electrical equipment, and was decommissioned, was simply thrown away, was not properly processed, was contaminating the environment. Act on electronic devices caused that today these products are processed properly. I could speak hours about that. Unfortunately, we don't have time about that. But what Kamil Mirowski said, regulations are so important and they have to be equal to everyone. If electronic devices from China is entering Poland, quite often it's not a subject of these regulations, and those who implement these devices pay the fee for the utilization of that devices, would also pay for utilization of these Chinese devices if they are sold through certain platforms, e-commerce platforms. So there are markets without so crazy pace. There are companies that want to make money on other companies that responsibly do their duties. Since I have so little time, thank you very much. Okay, just one more question maybe. We heard another question from the third row. Oh, I'm sorry, fourth row. Good afternoon, Elżbieta Lemańska-Bożowska, Social Movement for Climate. I wanted to ask a question because we heard a couple of times that a consumer has to be properly informed, but this notion was not explained at all. And in my opinion, consumers are not informed at all, and they have no knowledge about the influence of their purchases to the climate change. I know that it's inconvenient question in a country, but if we are talking about that, I would like to hear more about what is informed consumer is in the context of superproduction, overproduction, and how that influences the climate change. Okay, since we have 3 questions to Kamil, in fact, I will give you the chance to answer the first one, and then I will add 2 more questions. We will still have 6 minutes, and then it would be a final round. I see you are ready to respond. You know how it is. It's difficult to stop when you start already. I will respond to the first question. I'm not blocking anything. Perhaps we should ask that question to Ms. MP. I also have nothing in common with this government. I just wanted to underline that. Perhaps I would like to have this power to block it. It would be very beneficial. Unfortunately, I have this power. I would like to refer to what Andrzej said very shortly, because there was a really interesting question. I think that regulations today cause that if devices, products, goods are crossing the border through trade platforms, European Commission is so focused on these platforms that it's difficult to imagine a sector of e-commerce that is not regulated when it comes to EU market. The challenge that is not seen by EU is the situation when it goes through not the platform, but it's sent directly from the manufacturer, retailer, detail seller, not registered in EU, at least may not have the significant office. Right now, we can just open a company that would have 2,000 zlotys of a statutory capital, and you can't find the ends of this company. Another important question, what is green, what is eco for the consumer? We made some research, sociological, demographical, quantitative and qualitative. I can tell you it means completely nothing for consumer. For half of people, it does not mean anything. For others, some feeling of guilt. You mean emotionally or rationally? So they don't know rationally what does that mean. It's like, what does it mean if I say that my blue shirt is sustainable? Is that recyclable? Has a button that is made of recyclable plastic, or was it taken by airplane to Europe? So it means completely nothing for consumers. So the answer for this question, is it good for manufacturers? It's extremely bad for manufacturers, because if consumer does not understand these market conditions, he's not interested in them. Luckily, we have certain regulations that are formed today, a huge package of regulations from EU that say that manufacturer has to inform customer what is the consumption of water or resources to produce a product, what is a lifetime of the product, how it can be repaired. We will have a digital passport of the product. For that, a solution that we already tested, and that has quite nice impact. Third thing is about what we should not say to the consumer. If something was created according to the law, according to the procedure, we can't use it as a marketing tool, because everyone should follow that regulations. And third thing, if we say something about the product, then how can we confirm that? And here European Commission stands on the position that every marketing claim has to be verified by external organ. Is it good or bad? Let me put it this way. From our perspective, it goes to a better direction than it is now, but I think the lack of a common methodology still leads to failure. Because the one question that was mentioned already, if the customer has an information that this product was built from sustainable products, a minimum lifetime of the product is so and so, or only a button of this shirt was created sustainably. Or someone can say, okay, the button was made in a sustainable way, but the rest came from Bangladesh. So this economical compromise can give a chance to consumer a cost of usage, for instance. And those are good changes. When we say about clear, precise, feasible, interesting information about the product for consumer. Yes, also if this given product was created within the framework of reuse. And final question in this round. Slavek Sava, a citizen. That's how I introduce myself. A short question. We found out that this digital market makes it easier and more. More is a bigger burden for the environment when it comes to resources. You said about time perspective, income for companies for a couple of years, and for climate it's completely different perspective. What Zalando does today, Zalando will constantly impacting the climate. So my question, what can we do to want less? What can we do to have not only financial profit, but that company could see some environmental profit? Okay, thank you. Second question. Good afternoon, Paweł Godek, university teacher. My question relates to elements connected to developmental economical development, but basing on digital industry. From what we can see, a lot of startups and right now initiatives that are developing platforms that are similar to Vinted appear in different countries in Europe. And now the question, is there any concept that could reinforce this business in Poland, that can allow this kind of business to flourish in Poland? I would like to ask another question. Very shortly, please, yes. You said about supporting startups through Zalando. It's a great initiative. The question is, what about these digital ecological businesses? Are they also appear there? I think they might be treated as some competition to Zalando, but that's why my question comes from. What can we do to make people want less? I think it's not a question for business. I think it's, as you've said, more philosophical questions. First of all, we need to educate from the youngest age. If we would not implement basic ecological, environmental education in kindergarten on this matter, my 4-year-old children with a sense of superiority would preach my mother about a toilet use, that it's not a garbage, about water trays. I think that many people hear for the first time about water trays and carbon trays. Also in this digital sector, we can highlight this aspect. I think that if we don't build, I think we can say directly, if we don't have conscious consumers, it will not change, because business would always strive to make profit. We cannot erase that from tasks of business. Business can change form, can transform. Before becoming an MP, I also worked for business, and I think my impression is that it has no chances to change. But in what conditions business can change, that's the question for the discussion. But it will stay unchanged that business would still try to make as big profit as possible. So this is our job, people responsible for public questions, to deliver to citizens as much as possible checked and solid information, give mechanisms, give tools on every level. give money to NGOs, not take away, create mechanisms, invest in self-governments. All that has to be pro-citizens. Is it like that now? You have to answer everyone for themselves. I have my own answer. When it comes to ecological awareness on a school period, it also has to be improved. There is still a lot to change in this regard. In Warsaw, there are climate classes. I think that some self-governments provided that, took care about that, but some didn't. What about the role of this civic platform in building this awareness? Is it possible today? Is there enough support for NGOs to complete this mission? I will answer another question. I think that the more I think about it, the more I come to the conclusion that we need to introduce regulations that will make this greediness unprofitable. So that means some taxation over profit over a certain level. I'm not an economist, so I can't imagine another way how to make greediness not to be profitable. Other ways, I think that everyone just have to ask themselves this question every day. The bottom line here is that the most eco would be not to buy, and if we buy things more or less eco, so not buying would rather a win in this comparison. I apologize, I understand it goes in a contrary to the DNA of business, but we have to find some balance. And this line, those are great regulations about passport for every product. But going back to the paradox of the effectiveness, the increase of the effectiveness will not make people to use less. So we need to look at wider perspective. You have nothing to apologize for, because it's that we have different roles in the society. Business is needed because it's more causal part, but there are different points of view, different needs of certain sectors and organs in the state. Just one word. Yes, we are testing this kind of solutions. Okay, great. And I think that I will leave you with this thought that each of us needs to make this decision for themselves. What does it mean to use less in a more aware way, responsible way? And I wish you to be happy from your choices that you make, all in your balance of satisfaction and clear consciousness. And in the end, the comfort. Thank you for the participation in this panel. I invite you for next panels in this room and many others in this event. And I'm grateful to our panelists.
Każdy wybór ma swoje konsekwencje.
Dziś na kazaniu o takich jak ty mówili, że to morderczynie.
A wiesz, że ta, która ci pomogła, trafi za kraty?
Trzeba mieć sumienie.
Jak mogłaś to zrobić własnej matce?
Aborcja to najgorsza zbrodnia.
Gdybym ja podjęła taką decyzję, nie byłoby cię tutaj.
Organy państwa nie będą przyglądać się temu obojętnie.
Życie i zdrowie kobiety jest najważniejsze.
Stop kryminalizacji aborcji.
Kobieta decyduje.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Ihrer Ausreise.
Jestem z zawodu lekarzem. Zajmowałam się diagnostyką chorób nowotworowych.
W Białorusi zajmowałam się mikrobiologią i molekularną biologią.
Byłem nauczycielem szkoły podstawowej.
Naszym celem jest budowanie umiejętności, które są ważne na polskim rynku pracy.
Szybko nabierają takiej pewności siebie, bardzo szybko się uczą.
Wszystko możliwe, kiedy starasz się.
Dzień dobry. To znaczy, myśmy się dzisiaj widzieli. Wie pan co? Ja zmieniłem zdanie i chciałbym poprawić. Karty. W urnie. Dobrze? To ja sobie poszukam.
Serio? Pan sobie poszuka? Nadchodzące wybory są zbyt ważne, by zostawić je bez kontroli. Dołącz do obywatelskiej kontroli wyborów. Zróbmy wybory bez PiS-u.